exactly what digital transformation is. Well, essentially, it's the integration of digital technology. It's sort of fundamentally transforming the way that we're doing business for many organizations right now. In many cases, it's starting to replace many of the manual processes, creating, in some cases, new functions, new features. It's really, really thinking how business is starting to use and utilize people and technology and processes. Essentially, though, it is about the alignment between the business objectives or the goals of the organization. It's not just, or it should not be digitization just for digitization's sake. And just to sort of provide you with a sort of some real world examples, if you like. So if you look at the traditional supply chain management systems that many companies have been operating for, a couple of hundred years, really, where you're looking at that traditional supply chain from going from raw materials through wholesale, through to manufacturing, distribution, to retail, and then finally to the customer. That new supply chain management in the digital world really starts with raw materials, then really just going straight into the design and using things like 3D printing, and then providing access directly to the customer. So in some cases, it is about shortcutting. It is about doing things better. But as you'll see as I start to go through this, it's also about creating some opportunities and refocusing how people are better utilized in business as well.
There have been studies by McKinsey, for example, even back in 2013, where it was forecasted that 70% of organizations fail to effectively do digital transformation. And that percentage is presumably even higher in recent studies. So I would like us to unpack this a bit further. So perhaps, Munir, why do you think this is the case that, these organizations have not been able to effectively go through this digital transformation process?
Yes, there are obviously several different reasons to that. But what I keep hearing from colleagues in both other industries and other roles is typically that once you start treating digital transformation as a project, or just some sort of change management project, that's when many of those companies fail. That's when I think a lot of this really goes wrong. That some leaders believe that it's just about implementing some technology and let's go ahead. Because if you think about it, you could sit there and say, well, our employees are not ready yet and they're maybe not that digital, but any of you in the audience right now or in the panel, I mean, we are all having a smartphone, we are all on high-speed mobile internet. Well, so if you think about it, everything is really in place for a great digital lifestyle nowadays. But the question is, why aren't the corporates following suit? And that's the question we should ask ourselves.
Maybe I'll just bring in Ray for a moment because Munir talked about the fact that leaders are lacking that strategic understanding about how to do digital transformation. Ray, you pretty much do that in your work. You think you want to mention, add on a bit about that?
Yes, thank you, Sophia. I'd like to take off from Munir's point. That digital transformation should be seen in a holistic manner. And in my definition earlier, I said that digital transformation is it's all about strategy, and a successful execution of strategy entails three components. One is the digital transformation strategy. Two is the execution of that digital transformation strategy. And third is the culture behind it. Now, strategy, what is the digital transformation strategy? Now, it has to be cohesive. It has to be cohesive in nature. Implementing an ERP is not digital transformation. It has to be part of a whole. It has to be part of the digitization and digital transformation of the whole company. So implementing one-point solution, it is not digital transformation.
Randir, what do you think are the common misperceptions that people or employees have when it comes to, the digital workplace or a digital company?
Okay, let me, I'll come to your question. Let me comment on a few points that Monir and Ray said,
Sure.
so that it will kind of
Yes.
align with what you're asking. So, like Monir was mentioning about the way COVID impacted, right? I mean, and actually it fast forwarded digital transformation. It was blessing in disguise for many companies because that digital transformation journey kind of got fast forwarded. And the positive thing about this is that the whole change management aspect of it became easier. The folks who would have found it difficult to adopt to the digital world, they kind of became more open to it, and they started adopting the digital transformation part of it. So the human aspect that we are talking about, actually, in some sense, COVID positively impacted them. They became more open to adopting digital technology. That is one part I want to talk. The second part I want to talk about what Ray was talking about, the comprehensive approach. Now, what I've seen, and this is something that Monir and Ray were talking about, is that you need to have a very well defined approach on the digital strategy and the digital implementation. Unfortunately, what I've seen is that there is nothing like that, as it has been pointed out. There is no thought behind it. I'll give an interesting example. It's a real example in one of the companies where we are setting up the social networking platform and all this. We've been working extensively with the company. And one fine day, what happened was that suddenly the CIO, the IT team decided that we will have a different platform. So we've been training employees on a specific platform, or the culture change, all these things was done. Everything went fine.
I will give you a few things. As you can see, I have 3 different topics to go with you today. So what is the high performance, the transformation, and leading directly into the business enablement? High performance. And we talk a lot about it, guys, okay? We talk a lot about what it means, how it works, and I spent about 20 years, and we talk a lot about the multitasking and being so proud of them and of ourselves when we literally multitask. So this is when you try to do 2 new things. So when you have when you do 2 things at the same time, you cannot focus on the 2 new things. So this is also how we're gonna run this little webinar on that conference, guys. If you focus here, you see how much you can take out of this experience. But if you will be listening to me and doing something else, you're gonna miss. And always when you do those kinds of activities, also in your work environment, also at home, and you're trying to do 2 things at the same time, you're getting really split and you lose the focus. And in fact, there's a microseconds that it's lost over time. So when you do 2 things, you're not really doing them very well. Of course, you can do 2 things at the same time. And when does it really happen? Only when it's automatic. It's at the habitual level. Yes, Ira. Yes, breathing and working. You can also do it by talking on the phone and working. Why is that? Because one of the elements or one of the activities you're doing, it's already in the habitual level. So it's not in your front head, but in the back. And you can do it without the thinking.
So I think the COVID has provided us an opportunity, the key opportunity, and I think the other panelists will also confirm through their own inputs that transformation is the key. This is not just a time for change and simple adaptation. It's really disruptive what's happened, and it will continue to be so. And I'd like to start with Peter, please. Peter, looking at payments, what have been the key impacts of COVID-19? Because revenue coming in is key. If payments can't come in, then what do we do?
In the payments world, what we really saw out of COVID-19, the incredible events of this last 12 months or so, has actually been an acceleration. If we look back to what was happening in 2019, 2018, 2017, we saw a considerable move towards digitization, particularly in Asia Pacific. Some markets a little ahead of us here, The US a little bit, you know, behind some other markets, and Europe was probably at the forefront of all of this. But when we looked at the how do I actually attract people to my store now? In the past, they walked past, the shop was there, I'm in the mall, or I'm in Suntec or wherever. I can see that new shop. Oh, that's interesting. I'll go and have a look. How do I do that? So there was this sudden upsurge in interest in digital advertising, and particularly in social media types of digital advertising. So that suddenly became the new norm for people, was how do I normalize what I've never probably really done natively before? I've never had to, because people always came to me.
Right, right. And those are excellent points, Peter. Thank you for showing us what it looks like from your side, you know. And we may not have seen that in daily life, how payments are dealt with. And that brings me to a point that I'd like to raise with Miguel, please. Miguel.
Yeah.
Before we go to the actual banking, what are the key factors that we need to consider when we want to make an automation process successful?
Yeah, so our company, what we do is we automate paper and manual-based sales processes in fast-moving consumer goods companies, and we convert them into digital. So we've been implementing projects since about 8 years ago, and we have more than thousands of users right now. And we've discovered 5 key factors that really affect how successful projects are implemented. And the 5, it's easier to remember by the questions that they answer. It's the why, the what, the how, the who, and the when. So the why is all about strategic alignment. So the project must directly support top management scorecards. The closer the project is linked to the top management scorecards, then you have a higher chance of board support. So that's 1. Right. The number 2 is the what, and that's where the technology solution comes in. So the solution has to be easy to use, plus it has to be supported with excellent customer support.
Now we get to the nitty-gritty of this, and Bernard, please tell us your view. Yeah, what has COVID-19 done to banking?
Well, I think COVID-19 has brought a lot of changes to many industries. For banks, particularly banks in Singapore, it has suddenly accelerated the digital transformation. Suddenly the resolve to digitize for banks have never been higher during this period. When the senior management, they know that clients will not be stepping into the branches anymore. When they realize that the relationship managers, the client advisors are unable to go and meet their clients anywhere else, it forces the seniors to really relook at the model overnight. Otherwise, for the last 1 year, if nothing's, it lasted a year, almost a year before the regulators allow, start allowing people to go out to branches, increasing the capacity per branch slowly. Otherwise, there wouldn't have been any revenue at all. So the seniors were scrambling at that time.